Hey creatives, welcome back to my channel. My name is Nele and I make videos about bullet journaling, creativity and self-compassion. Today we are setting up my reading journal for 2024, but before we do that, we flip through the pages of my 2023 reading journal, which is basically the second half of the year because this is when I started this journal. And maybe you watched the video where I set this up and remembered that this notebook used to look a lot different. That is because I painted on it and I would say that worked semi-well. But I do enjoy the look and I don't want to waste this notebook and start a new one, so we'll be setting up the next year in this notebook as well. When it comes to my reading journal practice this year, I realized that I like minimal reading journaling and not putting too much time and effort into it a lot more. And I guess that I have a little bit of the problem that a lot of people seem to have with bullet journaling, with the creative side of it. I don't know about you, but I like to watch all these videos that we probably know from people who do amazing, beautiful creative scrapbooking reading journal setups, making them all look vintage and dark academia and very moody, and it just makes you amazed and really wanting to set up a reading journal too. But I realized that I don't enjoy that, which seems a bit surprising because I do enjoy setting up my bullet journal. And I like to be creative in my bullet journal, but in my reading journal, I discovered that this is more of a burden for me, and I don't look forward to do that. It's a lot of time that goes into those pages, and I just don't have the patience and the energy to do that. Also, I have ADHD, and repeating the same things over and over again is pretty boring and not a lot of fun for me. And besides that, I just don't have the resources that a lot of the people I watch online have. So I don't have a printer that prints color. I don't print out colored book covers of the books I read. And so I also don't want to print out pictures that would work with the books that I've read. Besides that, I also realized that the only real reason I enjoy my reading journal is to review the books I've read, to write down my thoughts. If it was a non-fiction book, write down some takeaways, and basically create a memory of the books I've read. I don't enjoy the reading challenges, the reading tracking that you can do in so many different ways, and all that stuff. And I got quite confused and overwhelmed by that throughout the year. So that didn't really work for me, and I looked at the pages I've set up last year and realized that 90% of that I wasn't enjoying. I don't really enjoy a book bingo because that puts a lot of pressure on me, and I think that reading generally is something I want to enjoy and not feel pressured about. And a lot of times with these layouts that I've set up before, that's what I felt. I felt pressured. So this time I decided to keep the initial pages of my reading journal more minimal. I wanted them to look nice still, but keep it simple. Not a lot of supplies, not a lot of aesthetical jish. Just really simple ways to make it look nice, with a couple of stamps that I own, a little bit of nice headings, and a little bit of washi tape basically. And I think you can also play around with the layouts, make that look a bit nicer, and then it already looks better than just a plain minimal setup, even though I would still consider this to be a bit more on the minimalist side compared to a lot of things that I saw online. But I do understand that this is still a lot of work for somebody else. You might not want to pull out stamps and washi tapes and all that stuff, and that's totally fine too. Another thing that I find overwhelming in the reading journal bubble, and that I feel a bit pressure about, is the amount of books I see people reading. I see people read hundreds of books a year, and this is something that is not really realistic to me. I was a bit surprised this year that I read more than I thought, but that is mainly because I started counting the audiobooks I'm listening to. I listen to a lot of audiobooks out of boredom when I do household tasks, boring things like that, when I'm going somewhere, whenever I have a spare minute, and I have a lot of free time at the moment, so that's when I listen to audiobooks. And in the end, these are still books I consumed and that I paid attention to, so I decided to count them into my book tracking, but not necessarily write about every audiobook in my reading journal, because some of them are just purely background noise and not something I want to remember. Right now we are setting up my want to read list, which could be a TBR, to be read list. I find want to read a bit more relaxing or relaxed. It's not putting too much pressure on me. And I decided to put in 10 different books here, which I've chose on the Storygraph app that I use to track my reading. And I find 10 books definitely a realistic goal, and I don't want to call it a goal because it's not necessary that I read every single of these books, but I would say a good half of them, maybe even more, as I can tell. 6 books of them are nonfiction books, mostly about autism and ADHD, which are definitely some things that I want to read more about, want to know about more, because I have both autism and ADHD, and I realized that reading books about that helps me a lot. So that's a big part of the list. And then there are just a few not fiction books that I'm excited to read and that are on my mind for a while now, or have been on my mind for a while now. And that's my want to read list. That's nothing fancy, and it's not overwhelming for me. So I'm definitely glad I decided to do it that way. And then after that, we are setting up my pages for the books I will be reading. I would have been reading in 2024. So this is basically my book tracker page. And I've seen so many different ways you could set up a page like that, and so many different ways I believe would not work for me. In the flip through from the beginning, you could see that I had this layout with the boxes of the numbers of books that I wanted to color in, and that got me so confused throughout the year because I always forgot how many books I've read before, and I had to go back, count all the books again, and that didn't really work. And then other people like to create these bookshelves where they would actually draw books into to fill them out. But that is also just too much for me, too much effort, too overwhelming, too unpractical, because I would believe that the books in these shelves often would be too small. You would have to squeeze in the titles, and some books have such long titles, holy crap. And so I decided to just make a very simple table, basically 2 tables, with the title of the book, the date I finished the book, and a note if it was an actual book or an audio book. And so I can keep track of every single book I consume, no matter the format, and just keep it simple because, that's how I realized I like my reading journal. Simple and not a lot of jish. I don't know, is jish even a word? I think it describes pretty well what I mean. And as you can already tell by now, the colors I chose for the setup were these 2 brown tones of Tombos. I linked them in the description box, as well as all the other supplies that I can find. And these stamps added a really nice touch. I mean, what other stamps could be appropriate for a reading journal if not those? And then I just wrote down the titles of the pages with a gel pen, which was not the best choice, but I wanted the color of the gel pen, and just made the font a little bit of a serif font. Even though it looks not perfect, I'm totally fine with that. I was considering using my alphabet stamps, but again, I wanted to keep this a low effort setup, and alphabet stamping takes such a long time. It is so annoying for me, so writing out the titles was definitely a good choice, and I do like how it turned out. It's not perfect, but it's alright with me. And then I just added a little bit of washi tapes to each page. These box of the thin ones I believe I got from Journal Say, and then I have this grid washi tape. I think I got that from Stationery Pal a long time ago, but I think you can get these grid tapes basically everywhere. And that's basically all that I used in the setup. I bought myself this Sakura Prigma Micron pen in a dark brown the other day, and I think that adds a big change to the pages because it's not that hard as a black fine liner, but it's definitely not necessary. You can also use a black fine liner of any kind. You don't have to buy extra supplies for any kind of notebook setup, so don't feel the pressure to do that. And with that being said, we're moving on to the last spread. And yeah, this is the last spread. As I said, I decided to cut down the pages I set up because 90% of the ones I had before I didn't fill out. What I realized when I started using the Storygraph app is that I really like the statistics of my reading. I don't know, maybe I'm the huge nerd, and with maybe I mean I absolutely am a huge nerd, and I just like to see how many pages I've read, how many hours I've listened to, and so I decided to make a monthly statistics page, and this one did not come from my brain. I believe that I've seen Heather from Mochi Bujo create a spread like that, and I would say that this could have totally been just another table like the books read on the last spread, but I totally agreed with her. It would just be the same layout and a little bit boring, and I like things to be not so boring. So this table is just basically a bit more spread out and has a separate box for each month. And I really like the look. It definitely is a lot of fun. And what I also like with the reading journal is that I don't really worry about not having enough space for the year. I don't think that I will finish this book in 2024 again, so I probably won't struggle with getting the statistics into one spread, if you know what I mean. Like if you compare that to my bullet journal where I would set up trackers for the year, I know that I will switch my notebook throughout the year, so I will think about, do I do a tracker for the whole year or do I just do the first 6 months, something like that. And with this, I'm pretty sure that my reading won't increase that much that I need to worry about just creating half a tracker or something, because I'm sure that it will fit on the spread. I'm not the best with words today, but I wanted to get this video done and get it out to, hopefully be enjoyed by some other reading nerds like me. So yeah, I am definitely curious to see how my reading will go in 2024. I think I might have some reading phases. There are always some times when I read a little more and sometimes a little less. But generally I can say that signing up to the library, which I did this year, so confusing to talk about the years at the end of the year, but this year I signed up for the library and it definitely increased my reading, not just with physical books because I tend to get 2 books a month, but I also got the opportunity to listen to audiobooks on the library app, and I've done that a lot for the last few months since I've got the library subscription, and I really do enjoy that, and I think that I will try to use that even more. And I also realized how nice it is to read ebooks on my phone when I'm on a train or something, going to my parents and sitting on the train for almost 2 hours. Then that's a pretty nice thing and I don't have to carry books with me. So I thought that I might try to read more ebooks through the library as well. Besides that, I think that my reading journal definitely helps me to figure out what I enjoy reading, because I realized this year that I'm actually not so much of a fantasy fan. I realized with a little series I read that I struggle a little bit to imagine things, like especially when it's fantasy and it's nothing real and you have to use your imagination. I really struggle to imagine the environment and the characters and the magical world and all that stuff, and I wonder if that's an autism thing or if that's just me, but because of that I don't enjoy fantasy that much. I realized that the books I liked the most are the ones that had strong character development and strong relationship developments that weren't necessarily romance stories, that were friendships or stuff like that as well. So yeah, I'm definitely curious to see how that develops in the next year. And I think with that we are almost at the end of the video. This is the final flip through of my reading journal, and I hope that this was inspiring and that it could show some of you that your reading journal doesn't have to be complicated and with a lot of effort and all that stuff, that it can be just a bit more minimal and just has to function and work for you. You're the only one who has to enjoy this journal, and so I hope that if you want to set up a reading journal, you will enjoy that too. And with that being said, thanks so much for watching, and I hope that I see you in my next video. Bye!